It was Leonardo da Vinci that said, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." And the same could be said about my art book collection here. Many, many unfinished books that have been abandoned over time. And honestly, that's why I haven't done the requested art book collection video. I know you guys see it in the back of my videos and you've been asking, Fiona, we want to see what is in your art book collection. We want to hear what your favorites are. And so today, that all changes. We are finally going to do it. I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite art books. Let's jump into it. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Fiona and I'm a full-time artist. And on this channel, I like to take you with me on my artistic journey, whether that means working on projects here in my studio, going out to see art exhibits, buying art supplies and sharing my haul with you, basically any art related content. So if that sounds like something you're into, please like and subscribe. It's one free click for you, but makes a big difference for my channel, and I would really appreciate it. I'm gonna start by stating the obvious. Art books are flippin' expensive, and that's why my collection has been grown over 20 plus years. Many were gifts. Many were when I was visiting an exhibit and wanted to pick up a book about it. And a ton of them are also from my art school days that were required reading. So in this collection, you will see books that are new and old. With that said, I'm going to link as many as I can in my Amazon storefront below, but if you can, go check out your local library first and see if you can find some of the books there. All right, friends, let's get into my top 10 favorite art books in no particular order. So the first book I'm going to mention is Ways of Seeing by John Berger. This book was originally published in 1972, and it was actually based on a BBC series. It has 7 essays in it, mainly around historical oil paintings, but the intent of this book is to bring up more questions than answers. So it's a small book with a lot of impact about how you would see art. I was introduced to it in art school. I don't really remember what class, but what I do remember is it was in a foundations class, so that was my freshman year, and I really do understand why they wanted us to read this, because it does get your wheels turning about art. Like, I thought I understood how to look at art, but after reading this book, it definitely made me question and look at things a bit differently. So if you're an art student, this is a high recommend from me personally. But I've highlighted a bunch of pages in here, so I'll read a few of those passages to you, but we'll start with the cover of the book, which says, "Seeing comes before words. The child looks and recognizes before it can speak. But there is also another sense in which seeing comes before words. It is seeing which establishes our place in the surrounding world. We explain that world with words, but words can never undo the fact that we are surrounded by it. The relation between what we see and what we know is never settled." Awesome. Love that. Like my microphone here on my ruler. This shirt is crinkly. The mic will pick that up, back end stuff. As you can see, yes, I have highlighted many things in this book that stood out to me at that time. Let's take a read. So the way we see things is affected by what we know or what we believe. In the Middle Ages, when men believed in physical existence of hell, the sight of fire must have meant something different from what it means today. Nevertheless, their idea of hell owed a lot to the sight of fire consuming and the ashes remaining, as well to their experience of the pains of the burns. So, just talking about context, right? We understand something based on our previous experience, and we bring that to every art piece that we look at, right? We never look at just one thing. We are always looking at the relation between things and ourselves. We are aware that we can also be seen. Every image embodies a way of seeing. Although every image embodies that, our perception or appreciation of an image depends also on our own way of seeing. No other kind of relic or text from the past can offer such a direct testimony about the world which surrounded other people at other times. In this respect, images are more precise and richer than literature. Ooh, that's a hot take. And then it goes into talking about reproductions. The National Gallery sells more reproductions of Leonardo's cartoon of the Virgin and Child with St. Anne and St. John the Baptist than any other piece in their collection. A few years ago, it was only known to scholars, and it became famous because American wanted to buy it for £2.5 million. So now it hangs in a room by itself. The room is like a chapel. The drawing is behind bulletproof glass, and it has acquired a new kind of impressiveness, not because of what it shows, not because of the meaning of the image, but it has become impressive and mysterious because of its market value. So that is also something to think about, especially when you're in museums, right? Like, am I looking at a piece because of what it represents or because it's took on this own mystique? Yeah, a very interesting book, not a huge read. I recommend, especially if you're an art student. All right, next we have The Secret Lives of Colors by Cassia St. Clair. I specifically remember being gifted 3 books on color one Christmas because I had the thought in my head that if I studied color, then I would make more thoughtful color choices in my works. While I do still work from a place of improvisation, I did find the 3 books to be very interesting. So this was one of them. There was also Chromophobia by David Batchelor and The Color Bible by Laura Perryman. But out of the 3 books, I think this kind of hit the sweet spot for me. The Color Bible is a little bit more utilitarian. There's like hex colors and suggested uses in it. And it gives you a little bit of historical context. And then Chromophobia is, it's like more storytelling, a lot of anecdotes, and the writing is very flowery, in my opinion. Whereas I like something a little bit in between, something that flourished and something that utilitarian. And The Secret Lives of Color did that for me. I found this to be an enjoyable read, a very fun read. Truth be told, I can't pronounce half of the colors in this book, but I did find it to be a delightful read. And that's also aided by the fact that it's so well designed. I mean, look at this thing. It's really, really nice. So we can agree it is a pretty book. So each section of the book is divided into sort of the main color. So you have white, yellow, orange, pink, which I appreciate. Pink is so underappreciated. I'm glad they included that. Red, purple, blue, green, brown, and black. And at the start, you do get like a bit about color vision, how we see, and then it goes into light, more color chart stuff, building the palette artists and their pigments. It talks a little bit about chromophobia. Let's go to red because vermilion is mentioned in here, and personally, vermilion is my favorite color. So you get a lovely splash of color, and it outlines the colors that you're going to see in here, and so it goes into it. Red. In 2012, a study was published in the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research advising waitresses to wear red. Why? Research found that if they wore this color, the tips they were given by male patrons would be increased up by 26%. Had no effect on female diners who were stingier tippers overall anyway. So, I mean, the book just has sort of like, you know, interesting thoughts and quips around color. So I do recommend. I also appreciated the breakdown about pink. Amazingly enough, the strict girl pink, boy blue divide only dates from the mid-20th century. Just a few scant generations ago, the situation was completely different. In an article on baby clothes in New York Times in 1893, the rule stated that you should always give pink to a boy and blue to a girl. Neither the author or the woman in the shop who was interviewing her were quite sure why. The author hazardly tongue-in-cheek guessed, "The boy's outlook is so much more roseate than the girl's. That is enough to make a girl baby blue to think of living a woman's life in the world." And in 1918, a trade publication affirmed that it was generally an accepted rule because pink was more a decided and stronger color, while blue was more delicate and dainty. So as you can see, it kind of breaks down like historical myths and mythologies around how we view color, and just like has some fun anecdotes. They're all pretty short, like each one's like a page, maybe 2 pages. Super interesting, really fun read. if you haven't read it, I recommend. And now we have a big, important art book, now with women. This is by Danielle Krysa. She is more widely known as the Jealous Curator, but she's an artist in her own right, and she saw a distinct lack of women in the art history books and took it upon herself to do a book about art history, including some of her favorite artists that are contemporary, so that we do not lose women in the history of art, which I think is a really beautiful thing. Have you ever walked into a museum and thought, where are all the women artists? You're not alone. For years, artist and curator Danielle Krysa wondered that too, and she's compiled the work, stories, and inspiration words of some of today's most exciting women artists in the book to share their experiences and motivate you to unleash your own inner artists. With 15 chapters, each organized around a project inspired by the work of contemporary creators, this book answers this question: where are all the women artists? With an emphatic everywhere. So, if you enjoy art and contemporary art and supporting women artists, I recommend checking this book out. It's, once again, lovely design, as you can see here. I personally discovered a lot of artists, the contemporary ones I didn't know about, along with some that are beloved. Hey, look at that. I already opened to Natalie Baxter, who I recognized her work based on her username on Instagram, Natty Bax. But yeah, she's like a fiber artist and, turns that into like contemporary work. Really good stuff. So it's fun to see artists that you know in it and learn about some new ones. Highly stylized still lives. Just a nice variety of work, and the questions and the answers in the book are quite similar to the Jealous Curators podcast. So if you enjoyed listening to her or reading her blog, which is what I did many years ago, and that's how I became introduced to the Jealous Curator, yeah, you should definitely check it out. And I think she's already published another book for children, if I'm not mistaken. So that might be one to also check out. We love women artists and we want to support them. So this is a good way of doing it. So the next book that we have here is Dream in Color, 30 Posters of Power, 30 Black Creators, curated by Trey Seals. And Trey Seals is an artist themselves, and they're in here. First page, I believe. Well, not first page, but here. So the way that this book came into my hands was when I was most recently in DC. I was able to take a trip to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which I very much recommend if you're in DC, checking out that museum. And we were in the gift shop and Dan was looking around and this caught his eye. It was actually packaged, so we weren't sure what it looked like inside, but we picked it up and my God, when we opened this, I just thought, wow. I mean, it is just like gorgeous. I am a sucker for a good type treatment. Once again, it's like having a compilation to learn about artists, seeing artists that I know in it as well that I just love. Like, how good is this? So pretty. So not only is this book full of beautiful work, you can tear them out and turn them into posters or frame them. And let me tell you, it is really tempting to do so. But there's something nice about having it in the book and having the compilation all together. Who knows? One day I might just go ahead and do that. But for now, I really enjoy having it. And I feel as an artist that was trained as a graphic designer, it really toes that line of design and art, which I personally very much enjoy. So that is a difficult thing to do. And I think the book just came together beautifully and is very well curated. So yeah, definitely check this one out. But let's read the back of the book together. Posters for posting and framing and welcoming and sharing and marching and teaching and celebrating and laughing and reminding and believing and inspiring and dreaming. How gorgeous is that? I love the message. I love the work in it. It is a definite recommend for you guys to check out. The next book is Universe by Phaidon Press, and it is a book that intersects two things that I love, which is astronomy and art. And so it has 300 visual images that in some way relate to the cosmos. There's artists in here that I know and love, like for instance, Alexander Calder, and then ones that I'm not so familiar with. So Pablo Carlos Budassi, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Observable Universe. So just some very interesting things. And it's not done chronologically at all. It sort of pairs images together that they think relate to a good contrast and your way of perceiving the work by what it's next to. But when I first opened it, the first image is the Quays of Lascaux in France, and I just thought, okay, I'm gonna really like this book. And if they're able to reference that and bring it back to the cosmos, I love that. I love it. So just a big, beautiful book, and the parts that are written are also super fascinating. But even just to take a quick look through and get inspired by what you see, oh my gosh. Mission Success from 2004. When the Mars Explorer rover spacecraft Spirit landed on Mars near the Gustav crater in 2004, it sent this view across its landing site as its first postcard home. And mission scientists had a very conflicting feeling about what they saw. The first was elation at mission success, everything worked, but at the same time, there was a sense of anticlimax considering the image itself. It shows a flat brown plain littered with rocks. So I think that that's interesting. Lakes on Titian. So this comes from the Cassini radar. They also have images from the Hubble, which, if you're familiar with me and my work, I had done images referencing the Hubble. I spent quite a lot of time going through there. I even did some imagery where I overlaid on the Hubble. But they have images here from NASA and the Space Science Institute as well. So it's like a good combination of that, as well as images from artists. I think there's some Kandinsky in here. Just really, really gorgeous. I think as humans, this is something we can all relate to, the cosmos and that feeling of our place in the universe. So then when you see it through the lens of visuals and artists, I think that's really fascinating. I mean, does this not make you gulp? Ugh. Very, very cool. Beautiful book. Really recommend. Yayoi Kusama by Louise Neri and Takeya Goto. And listen, I have many, many art books about artists. And this is for me visiting exhibits where I may have liked a particular thing, like the Joan Mitchell exhibit I had gone to, Catherine Bradford, at Murakami. Yeah, there's a lot of books I have from visiting specific exhibits. I also have a lot of biographical art books about Impressionists, mainly because that was some required reading in art school, and I did hold on to those books. And Van Gogh was my favorite artist for quite some time, so I have a lot of books on Van Gogh. But now my favorite artist is Yayoi Kusama. So when I was trying to decide which book out of sort of the artist biographies to bring up, I just had to go to this one. So what's great about this book about her is, one, you get really gorgeous full page spreads of the work, which I personally like in my art book. I want big, beautiful, colorful spreads with the work. Oh, her infinity nets. And I'm a big fan of her paintings. Her installations are very cool as well. But I am a big fan. Oh, I remember I've seen this one in the Upper East Side. Gorgeous, gorgeous. But anyway, what this book does well is it sort of divides it up by her bodies of work and then kind of goes through it chronologically, so you can kind of see the progression of her work. So you have a foreword, a prologue, and then it gets into early work, infinity nets, accumulations, performances, love forever, mirror rooms, large sculpture, new paintings, and then you get an epilogue and a chronology. So I think, I think the book does a good job honoring her as an artist and, her work over time. I love the works of her, like the photos of her with her work in the old studios. And, showing, just beautiful, gorgeous images of her, the pieces, and just, how it's progressed over time. Also, like, sort of these captures of the performance pieces that she did. Of course, her infinity mirror rooms, which are very, very popular now. And, some more recent stuff. So it's a good, I think it's a good collection where it shows you a lot about her in the past and the present, and gets you kind of caught up to where she is now. I mean, even her brand collaborations. So, and, has a lovely list of works in the back, so you can do a little bit more research after if you so feel, and the chronology. So, goes all the way back here to 1929 when she was born in Matsumoto City in Nagano Prefecture in Japan. And then it goes all the way up to 2012. So a beautiful book, well designed, full of gorgeous images. And if you're a fan of Kusama, I recommend checking this one out. So this next little book is actually very personal to me. This is the Chichu handbook from the Chichu Art Museum in Naoshima, Japan. I took a trip to Naoshima back in 2018, and the time that I spent on that island at this museum was completely life-altering for me. I wasn't even there that long, but I find that in my mind, I go back and I visit Naoshima a lot. It is my happy place. I felt happiest and most at peace there. And I visit there a lot. And this little book helps bring me back too. So the book itself details the museum experience. The museum first acquired some of Monet's Water Lily series, and they created an entire museum around that acquisition. So it talks about the building's architect, Tadano Ando, and they had De Maria and Turrell come in and add works to also complement the Monets. And the way the book talks about the intention behind the museum, Chichu literally means underground, and the museum is, for a good part, underground. It works with nature. There's natural light for when you're viewing many of the works. And just reading the intent behind it after having experienced it myself, it's very emotional for me. It is very emotional. But it is a beautiful little book. So it shows all the pieces that are in the museum and talks about each one. It talks about the architect and, sort of the spaces in the museum. And as I said, as someone that's experienced it and then acquired the book after, it's nice to revisit. So while this is one of my top favorite books for what it means to me personally, if you've visited a space and they do have a little handbook about it, pick it up, because it allows you to sort of revisit it and experience it again and live through those memories as well. I think it might be time for me to book a trip and go back. But for now, I have the handbook and that's what I'll be looking through. So we have Clay, Contemporary Artisans. It's a Tame Hudson and it is by Amber Cresswell Bell. And this is actually a book that I got as a gift for my mother. So this was not in my art book collection. This was something I gave to her, I think, for probably Mother's Day many, many years ago. I think before I was even involved in doing any sort of ceramics with her. I just knew that she was getting really into it. So I thought, oh, this is seems like a nice, good, inspirational book. And now in turn, when I started doing some coil building here around the studio, my mom took this book out and handed it to me and thought, you might need this for inspiration. And boy, she was not wrong. So, although back in the day when I picked it up, see, look at this. I got like a napkin in here to have a page marked. Oh my gosh. Like, so for me, being new in my coil building journey, it's so great to see artists working in that, doing hand building, because throwing gets a lot of attention, right? So it's so nice to see work by artists, just hand building stuff and giving you ideas. Like for me, it just completely spun me off in a lot of directions that I could not have even imagined after taking a browse through this. The photographs are gorgeous. It also has anecdotes about like how each artist got into their ceramic practice, which I love, just hearing the different ways that people get into making art. So this book is no different. It gives you a really good perspective on that. And yeah, I discovered so many ceramicists that are contemporary whose work I really, really like. Started following them on Instagram and everything. And it's also a good example of people playing in a medium that you're playing in and seeing just all the different directions you can go. The foreword is written by Pottery Throwdown host Keith Brymer Jones, and man, he is such a gem. Like, the way he just cries over the work, gets so passionate and so emotional. Kleenex, you just need to give that man a brand deal because, my gosh, he's so passionate about the medium of clay. And you really get the sense in this book of the artists that are so passionate about it and all the different things that they can do with that medium. So if you are also passionate about ceramics, whether you're somebody that partakes or just appreciates, I recommend this book. Speaking of artist stories and these compilation books, I wanted to include Why I Make Art: Contemporary Artist Stories About Life and Work from the Sound and Vision podcast by Brian Alfred. So this is a book based on a podcast. So I know that we had the book by The Jealous Curator, who has a podcast, but this book is specifically based off that podcast and the conversations that he's had with artists. I discovered the podcast back when Heather Day was on it, who is a painter whose work I very much appreciate and like. And I went and I looked it up. She was episode 144, and she's included in this book. So what I'll say about listening to a podcast and then reading it in written form many, many years later, it's a different experience. It's really interesting. And even if you haven't read the podcast, I would say you should check this book out. I'm always inspired to hear fellow artists, their journey to making art, and where they're at now with their work. And, you know, hearing contemporary artists speak about it. Because obviously all the history books and all of that are great, but as an artist working in the now, it's nice to see what your contemporaries are up to. So they have a list of amazing artists here, some that I didn't know, and I haven't listened to their episode. So very, very enjoyable. There was something in here at the start here, where this is what I liked in the introduction by Brian Alfred. He said this book is full of written portraits of artists, and it's not about one thing in particular, theory or studio practice or their inspiration. It's about them as people in the world. And as an artist myself, I wanted to approach this compendium of portraits as an exploration rather than a place to make definitive statements about art being made today. Going back over the talks has been like watching a complicated movie for the second time. I've seen things more fully with deeper context and richer understanding. It's also allowed me to slow down, reconsider, and ponder what's being said, and I hope this book does the same for you, which it definitely did. I think as someone that's listened to the podcast, going back and reading the written word, it's very, very interesting and very, very inspiring. And it's also nice to, have the imagery to accompany it. Because, of course, when you're listening to a podcast, you're listening to someone describe their work, but it's nice to have it here. For instance, this is the Heather Day chapter, and it's nice to have the image of her work next to it, although I'm familiar. But more so for the artists I'm not familiar with, it's nice to have images of their work as I'm reading about it, which obviously you don't get with the podcast. So, yeah, another nice little book. You can learn about some new artists and what they're up to and how they got into their practices. So I just love artist stories, or as he said, artist portraits in written word. So this is another one that I would recommend you check out. The next book is one that I'm actually in process of reading. So it is Your Brain on Art, How Arts Transform Us by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. So this is an interesting book because it's talking about how art affects us on a deep, deep physical and mental level, the science of that. And when you have sort of a science-based book about art, it helps you take art out of this place as like, oh, that's like a cute little hobby, what some people may see as even a waste of time or not valuable, and actually shows like how good the arts are for humanity. So for me, I'm somebody that when the Surgeon General had posted in 2023 about we have an epidemic of depression, isolation, and loneliness, I immediately thought, well, art can very well combat that, whether it's work in people's homes or out in public spaces. Public work can definitely do that. And it's a big piece of why I do public art is I feel it has a place to combat that epidemic of loneliness. It might spark a conversation between two strangers walking by. It might bring a smile to someone who maybe is depressed and just having a bad day, and they just have those few moments of experiencing this work and that joy. So just having a book that backs up all of that from a science standpoint is a really nice thing. As I said, I am in progress of reading it, and I'm actually going to a talk they're having on January 22nd. I'll leave the information below if you're based in New Jersey. Please come, pick up the book, hear her speak about it. And I think it's going to be really, really fascinating. As somebody that has a vested interest in the arts, having anything that helps uplift the art community is something that I am about. So yeah, an interesting read. Whether you were involved in the arts or you're just an art appreciator, you should check it out. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found a book or two that maybe you're gonna pick up and check out. If you're interested to see more of my book collection, I am going to do a meander through all of it with the members this month. So in my membership, I do a monthly video, early access to videos, and you guys can write me if you have any questions about anything specific, and I'm happy to answer it in a video. So just really fun stuff over there for about the cost of one coffee a month. It really helps me out, supports everything I do on this channel, and yeah, it's appreciated. So big kiss to my members out there. If you're interested to learn more, you can hit the join button and it'll tell you all about it. But for now, thank you very much for watching this video, And yeah, I hope that you'll do a little bit of art reading this year in 2025. But for now, I will see you next Friday in the next one. Until then, stay well and stay inspired, my friends. Bye.